So this guy actually fell in love with his roommate, and she didn't love him back, and so he got revenge on her. Now the guy's name is Kwang, and Kwang is 55 when this story starts, and he's living in Tennessee. Here's the thing about Kwang. He's got some serious anger issues, and once he snaps, it's like he turns into someone else completely. So one day, around 2012, he decides that he wants a fresh start, and he moves from Tennessee all the way over to Orange County, California. Once he's there, he needs a place to live. So he goes on Craigslist to look for an apartment, and that is where he finds an ad that says, "I'm looking for a nice, normal roommate." Now that ad was placed by this woman, Maribel. And Maribel's around 35, and she's an Army veteran, and she's currently in college. So Kwang sees this ad, and he's like, "It's perfect. I'm a nice, normal guy." So he replies, and he asks if he can come see the apartment. And Maribel's like, "All right." And so later, Kwang shows up to her place, and they meet, and he seems nice. You know, he's a little older than her, but he seems mature and stable, and not the kind of guy to bring drama like a younger roommate might. So Maribel agrees, and Kwang moves in. And a few months go by, and everything's going smoothly in the Kwang-Maribel apartment. Kwang mostly keeps to himself, he pays his rent on time, and he doesn't cause trouble. He's like the perfect roommate. But then, Maribel starts to notice a few things are a little off about him. Like, he doesn't seem to have any friends. He rarely goes out. He mostly stays indoors. He barely talks to anyone. And Maribel, she's a good-hearted person, and she starts to kind of feel bad for him. Like, why doesn't anyone want to be friends with him? And so she starts inviting him along to things, like when she has dinner with her family. So he tags along and he meets her family and they all get along well. And pretty soon he becomes like part of the family. And over time, he and Maribel become legitimate friends. They hang out, they walk their dogs together, they pick things up from the store for each other, all of that. But then, we're in 2013 at this point, then something happens to Kwang. He starts to catch feelings for her. He starts looking at her differently, like she's kind of fine. And soon, he starts thinking he wants to marry her, even though they've never once been romantic. So instead of keeping his feelings to himself, he just straight up tells her, "I want to marry you." And Maribel, I'm sure she's nice about it, but she apparently shoots him down real quick. Like, she tells him that she doesn't see him in that way and that maybe they should just be friends. And Kwang is devastated by this news. I mean, after all the time they spent together, the dinners, the hangouts, everything they shared, he thought there was something there. But no, he was wrong. She's just not that into you, bro. But Kwang, he's not ready to give up. He starts doing whatever it takes to make her fall in love with him. Like, he goes and he gets a big tattoo on his arm because he remembers she said that he'd look good with a tattoo. Here's an actual picture of it. You can kind of see it's a Bengal tiger. He also changes other things about himself, like he starts dressing younger, he starts going out more. He even spends $10,000 to get plastic surgery on his face to make himself look younger. I guess he's trying to match her age. But even after all that, Maribel still doesn't see him in a romantic way. She just wants to be friends. Now, I'm not entirely sure if he does this because he's mad at her or why he does this, but one day, Kwang just stops paying rent. Like, he completely stops. So Maribel starts covering his half because, she's not trying to get kicked out, but eventually she confronts him about it. And Kwang, he doesn't like this, and so they get into a huge argument. And she tells him that they're no longer friends, and also that by the end of the month, he needs to move out. And that is when shit gets really crazy, because Kwang finally just snaps. Like, how dare she try to evict him from the apartment? He can't let that slide. And so he starts yelling at her and threatening her, and Maribel, she doesn't like where this is headed. So she calls 911, and she tells them that she's afraid of her roommate and that she wants him gone for good. And soon the police show up, and they mediate, and they talk to the both of them, and Maribel is nice. So she tells them that she doesn't want to press charges, she just wants Kwang gone. And I guess Kwang agrees to leave. So days pass, and now we're in a new month. But Kwang still hasn't moved out like he said he would. He keeps stalling, he says he's job hunting and that he needs more time. But eventually, Maribel has had enough of his excuses. One night, she confronts him and she tells him that he needs to be gone by tomorrow. Then Kwang starts cussing her out, and so now Maribel's all pissed off. So she calls up her friend, this guy, Paul, and she asks him for help. And Paul, he gets on the phone and he warns Kwang that if he doesn't move out by tomorrow, that he'll come over there and he'll make him move out. And I don't know if Kwang agrees or where that conversation with Paul leaves off, but what I do know is that deep down, he's really pissed off. And he's decided that he's gonna get revenge on Maribel. And so that night, he waits until she's asleep. And he sneaks into her room, and while she's laying there, sleeping, suddenly, boom, he grabs her, and he starts strangling her. And this, unfortunately, unalives her. Then he takes her and he buries her in a local canyon. And within about a day, her family realizes that they haven't heard from her. So they go to her place, and she's not there either, and so they contact police. So then, police start investigating, and they end up questioning Kwang. And immediately, his story doesn't add up. And so now, they're suspicious of him. But without solid evidence, they can't really do anything. They certainly can't arrest him. Meanwhile, Maribel's family keeps trying to find her. They post her pictures on social media. They even organize a candlelight vigil. And strangely enough, Kwang even joins in on the search. Like, he's always posting about how he misses his roommate so much. But that is where he starts to screw up. At one point, he posts a long message about Maribel on Yelp for some reason. And he's calling her his best friend, and he's saying she was his only family, and he's talking about how he would give his life for her. But immediately, people notice something in the message is off. Because he's talking about her in the past tense, like he knows that she's dead. But even so, police, they have no definitive proof that he's committed any crimes or done anything wrong. So it's starting to look like Kwang might actually get away with murder. Until one day he goes to a public library and he rents a laptop. And while he's there browsing, he sees a post about an awareness walk that Maribel's family is organizing in her honor. And it's gonna be held near that local canyon. And Kwang, he starts freaking out like, oh my God, what if they find the body? So he types the address of the walk into Google Maps. Then he zooms in on an area right near a tree. The same spot where he buried Maribel. I guess he's checking for the distance from the spot to the walk, and he's making sure that it's far enough so that people won't stumble upon the burial spot. So when he sees it, he's relieved. Then he deletes his search history and he moves on. But what Kwang doesn't know is that the police have long been suspicious of him, and they've been monitoring everything he's been doing on this public library computer. And they can see that he has zoomed in on an area in Google Maps. And so they head out to that area, and of course, they end up finding Maribel's remains. And so, bam, police arrest Kwang. Here's his mugshot. And eventually, he's found guilty of murder, and he's sentenced to 15 years to life in prison.